Hi, Steve Lone, MyMoneyGuys.com. What's a recession? Seriously, what's a recession? You hear about it all over the press, in the news, because guess what? The R word really does get people's attention at this point in time. A recession is essentially typically defined by 2 quarters, sequential quarters of reduced economic growth. Does that mean that we have a recession like, the dot-com, to 2000, 2003, or do we have something like the financial crisis in 08, 09? Does this feel like the financial crisis to you? Literally, financial crisis got to the point where you had banking and huge companies that were essentially going away. We were systematically taking apart the economy very quickly. We got close enough during the financial crisis. Most people don't get this, but we were literally a couple of days away from taking out your debit card, going to the bank, putting it in the machine, asking for cash, and have it not come out. Imagine what the U.S. would have been like during that. Does that feel anything like this right now, where you've got big companies going out of business? I mean, we've got 3% unemployment. You don't normally have recessions with 3% unemployment. It doesn't mean that we can't have that, but it doesn't feel like you've got a systematic dismantling of the economy at this point in time. We're slowing it down. Granted, we're slowing it down pretty quickly because we've got an inflation issue, but we don't necessarily have to have a deep recession, and there's a huge difference between a deep recession and a mild setback. The ones that we're used to in recent history, there again, it's human behavior. It's behavioral finance is what it's called. What do we remember? We tend to remember history that we were involved in recently. Well, 2008, 2009, who forgets that? Nobody. So it always seems like, all right, is a recession going to be really this big? No. Most of them aren't. They have been in recent history, but we tend to have long periods of economic growth as well too. So, is COVID going to come around? We weren't sure what the world was going to look like during COVID, as far as, are we going to have financial markets? Are we going to have people left? I mean, these are the kind of questions you're asking then. You don't hear those kind of questions right now. You hear about more unemployment. You hear about knocking down inflation. You hear about industry in America still doing well. You hear about heating and energy issues as far as going on in the world, etc. Of course, China's still locked down with COVID, and we don't know what that's going to look like moving forward either. There again, there's 25 things going on. We monitor all those as anybody does, but you don't know what the headline of the day is going to be. Recessions happen all the time. I wouldn't say that they're often, but they happen all the time. And they don't need to be broad and deep. They just need to be a resetment or a resetting of economic conditions that get out of whack. That happens all the time. I mean, you got pieces of the economy that get hot and speculative, and they have to come back down. And a recession is a way of clearing those things out. Now, they don't have to be deep. I mean, there's going to be some areas of the economy that probably will be impacted a whole lot more than others, but it doesn't mean the whole economy has to, essentially go in the toilet. It just means a slowing down of that. Now, you normally have an increase in unemployment because when the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, they put the brakes on the economy, slow it down, and companies don't sell as much, so their earnings come down, their revenues come down, they cut people that they don't need. They do all kinds of things to essentially conserve cash, and they don't invest in future projects nearly as much during those periods of time. But that changes. We don't stay in recessions for long periods of time. The exception to that was obviously the Great Depression way back when. 08, 09, even we came out of that, and it took some time. But, these are kind of a refreshment to the next period of time for economic growth. Expect recessions, okay? Things that are going to be more recession resistant are going to be those things that people need to have every day. I mean, they tend to be consumer goods, foods, things like that. Something we use every day. People taking trips, going on cruises, taking vacation. When you start buying expensive things that you normally have a lot of, buying new houses and those kind of things, those don't work well in recession because people slow down. They put off these things that they don't need. They'd like to have, but they don't need. And when money feels like it's tight and you're hearing it about recession on TV all the time, you tend to start believing what people are telling you. So a lot of these things kind of come to fruition just because they're told, yeah, we're going to have a slowdown. You start thinking about those things. How's my job doing? What do I need to put away for the kids? What do they need, family-wise? We got enough house? We're going to improve it as opposed to buy a new one. What are interest rates on things? All these kind of things matter. But it doesn't mean that you have to have a significant slowdown. It just means that you have to have a settling back in things. And they don't ever know what a recession is until after the fact, because that's actually measured after the fact. You know what it is kind of by the GDP number that's reported literally every quarter. So we had a quarter of slowed down economic growth. We had a second one. You just have to make sure that your portfolio and everything that you have looking at this is essentially going to take advantage of that when it happens, because recessions don't last long, usually 18, 24 months. Economic growth lasts multiples of that as far as years go at this point in time. Okay?